Hey everybody, Adam here with a quick programming note. What you're about to hear is the end of that big marathon finale recording session where we recorded our after show. There's actually one of these for every show we've done, other, I think, than the very, very first episode 0 where we played Psionics. But this one's a little longer on account of it being the finale, but we figured kind of what better way to celebrate wrapping up this epic campaign than by sharing this little peek behind the scenes with our regular listeners. If you like what you hear here, there's more of that if you want to jump in on our Patreon. And if not, we really appreciate you sticking through it. We hope you enjoy this little conversation. There's less editing on these, so there's a little bit more just kind of like table noise. It's a little more chatty and casual. And, we tend to be a little punchy by the end of our recording sessions, and none more so than this one. So, if this is an energy that you like or it has information that you're interested in, check out the others. Otherwise, we'll see you in not too long from when this goes live for a sort of whole campaign retrospective that we recorded a little ways after this big recording session where we did our finale. We hope you have enjoyed listening. We hope you continue to enjoy listening, and we're excited to share this with you.
For the peaks, we're doing C-Bat. Adam does not know what this is.
I was not prepared.
Oh, way to bring that back.
Bless you.
Fucking 10 hours later.
C-Bat, for Adam and for any listeners, is a both rhythmically and melodically wonky piece of electronic music that became a bit of a meme on Reddit, probably elsewhere on the internet, after someone posted that it was the perfect music to have sex to. Which it is not. I mean, whatever. I mean, go with God if that's your thing. But I think it was, and I don't think anybody was passionately arguing that point. It was mostly a joke.
Didn't it start as Am I the Asshole?
Did it? Oh, it might have. That's totally possible.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, that particular corner of Reddit. Yeah.
Well, this is weird energy to start the Peaks on. Welcome to the Peaks. I applaud the callback because, it has been very nearly 10 hours since we first convened.
That was a punchline that you, dear listener, almost certainly did not hear the setup for.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is the kind of thing that you have presumably come to these peaks for, as we continually do it over and over again. So how else to end than as we began and indeed went on. Welcome to... Now, this Peaks is going to cover... what likely to you, listener, were episodes 54 and 55, which were recorded in one marathon session that we set aside to do. I believe the plan is to make these peaks publicly available as well, as a sort of end of campaign gift to our non-Patreon listeners. Though I'll take this opportunity to say to our patrons, thank you. Here we are at the end of a 55 episode campaign with some one shots and things sprinkled in. It's been a ride already, and I'm excited to do the next stuff too. So, we thank you, our non-patron listeners. Thank you for keeping this thing going.
Yeah, here. Thank you.
Well,
welcome those who would not normally hear the peaks.
Yeah.
Hopefully you enjoy it, and hopefully you consider joining us if you're able and if you'd like to. And yeah, I mean, I've said it before, dear supporters, we objectively love you more. So thanks.
It is a repeated refrain. We do love you more.
We do.
But we love all of our listeners.
Indeed. There's lots of love to go around, which was sort of a theme of our finale, which I really loved. Mm-hmm. Like, there were all sorts of punches it didn't pull. I found some of the temptation section to be pretty gut punchy. Mm-hmm. That shit got me pretty good.
Yeah. Now that the campaign is over, so we are planning to have sort of our next regular episode out be sort of a campaign retrospective. So we'll get into like the big picture stuff more there. But I can kind of be very open now that this campaign has wrapped. The sort of tempting worlds, like I was under no illusions that those were going to be successful. Obviously, that's not the story we were telling. Not what anybody wanted to do. But I kind of made the executive decision that whatever it is that underlies that phenomenon, that force, is petty. And if it couldn't convince you, it just wanted to hurt you.
Yeah. No, that came across. Came across, and it made total sense that like it isn't this unknowable.
You gave someone not quite Thad Dusk's voice. I'm just like, fuck you for that, sir.
Yeah,
totally.
And so on the one hand, right, it made it in some ways easy to just be like, well, fuck off with that. But on the other hand, the goal is that as in character, it would be like that much like more impactful and rougher a thing.
A hard experience, if not a hard decision, right?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Well said.
But you even did something different with Varric's voice, which was like I'm assuming you did something different with Varric's voice in that moment where it was not quite right.
It's interesting because it is down to not me going, oh, I'm going to do this subtly different thing with Varric's voice, but he was just saying things in ways that Varric doesn't usually, and that was enough to sort of, pull it in a direction in terms of the voice. That and the length of the recording session, I'm sure, factored in as well.
It was well done.
Yeah, all of those sequences were perfectly off in a really solid way.
I'm glad. Yeah, I was trying to make it, appropriately climactic, even when there was not really that much like doubt as to how things were going to shake out, right? Because you had gone in with the decision made for quite a while, which, I think was.
I think for more than a year by this point.
I didn't expect any of us to waver.
Yeah.
If anything, I expected maybe not all of us to get that far. Because, I didn't think it was a given that we were all going to survive the fight.
Same.
The big fight.
Yeah.
It wasn't, and this maybe will end up being my low. I had put Cirtha in the position that Cirtha was in specifically so that it was available as a rug pull that you could do to Celiand. She didn't know Cirtha was still alive. So had it gone that way, I had set this up for a while, right? All the way back to running into Eka in Fermata, where he was sort of like trapped there. That had been kind of the plan, that Cirtha could be an out if Celiand was like, aha, now I'm the last Imperator and I shall become the Overgod. Crickets, because she doesn't know Cirtha's still there. So I needed to tie that off, and certainly the way that it was going was towards hostilities, though it ended up being maybe not quite as...
I found it extremely personally satisfying.
Well, good.
Because I got to finally just, use their chancel in the way that they had tried to fuck around with ours, and, middle fingers them all the way. Because I personally bear the Cirthans a great deal of ill will.
Right. And I didn't think it was bad or wrong the way that it went, but I was sort of like, this feels a little tacked in. But I felt like it needed to be dispensed with since I had laid all the track that didn't end up actually being necessary.
I liked it a lot personally. It did feel like tying off a loose end, sure, but it was also the part of the reason that it felt so right for the Overgod or the force behind it or whatever to be petty, and part of the reason it felt so good to have to tell the Cirthans to fuck off, was that the final boss battle isn't the point of this campaign. Right? It was extremely satisfying, and the fact that it happened wordlessly diegetically and that it was kind of nasty was great. But that isn't the climax, right? So the fact that there was social stuff, and the fact that there was, whether or not any of us were ever going to break, which I don't think we were, the fact that our characters had to overcome that, to me, that felt really right. I liked it a lot.
I also liked it a lot because it felt like if we had not got a little bit more of Cirtha or figured out what was going on with Cirtha by the end, it would have been one of those things that came up in our post-mortem episode. Like, I would have had so many questions about it. I adore the on-off switch that they seem to have.
That was such a nice touch.
I love that. I have no idea why they have that, but oh my god, it's kind of incredible.
Here's the thing. They don't know why they have that either.
Why do we even have that button?
Yeah, and the only entity that could have answered was Cirtha, who clearly never gave them an answer.
Yeah.
One of the things that Cirtha was in the campaign for at all is like a very authoritarian but relatively like
aloof,
relatably human kind of imperator. Aloof, certainly, but aloof in the way that like the Chinese emperors were aloof, right?
Sure.
Not like inhuman, in quite such a way.
Like our boss.
Yeah.
Our initial boss.
Or the deep. Dagoom.
Yeah. It was interesting because...
Did we ever have a direct conversation with Dagoom other than, bitch, we're better than you?
Here's a fun little thing, too. You couldn't have. Dagoom just does not communicate verbally. But that was a thing I thought was maybe going to happen earlier in the campaign. But by the time we got to all of this, even, like where we were leading up to you guys going to Tintern, I was like, okay, well, this is, Dagoom is essentially prey for Celiand unless somebody does something about it at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Which we didn't, and oops.
Well, that
no.
relates back to the inception of the idea for this campaign being partially down to the Dominions franchise.
Yep.
Because your god can just be a big fish that is big enough to be
a big
godly.
rock.
Or a big rock.
And in the game.
Yeah. So that was kind of where Dagoom was, in the constellation of things going on in all of this.
I think maybe my high was just like, I feel like the group was really jiving and really kind of vibing with just the way that some of the dialogue flowed. And like, we've talked a lot about how much we've learned about pacing throughout this campaign. There were just some really good moments in this, I think. Always for the listener to decide, but it felt really good while we were doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think my high was going up the moon road, middle fingers bared at the Serthans. Not gonna lie.
Doing a wheelie in the parking lot, dust cloud.
Giving him a swirly the whole way up.
Yeah.
Because...
Nice Apian way. It's mine now, nerds.
Like, they were so friggin' rude to me during the entirety of their stay. And just... Bitch, I'm better than you.
If we didn't need the moon, it would have been fun just to flip that switch multiple times out of sheer pettiness. I think that's like not quite a low, but a thought that I just had that I was like, darn. Missed opportunity to push every button on the elevator.
Yeah, totally. Well, there were just like little moments of us goofing off that gestured at the way these characters had come to enjoy being goblins together that I thought was like also really important as part of like a conclusion.
And I actually got to use each part of my portfolio as like we concluded this whole thing. I think everyone got to, basically.
Yeah, my use of revelry was a little forced. That might be my low. I wish I'd found a more direct way to use revelry. I was thinking maybe being bad guests with the Sirthans. There was something there, but like that resolved a different way. It's not a huge deal, but yeah, that was one thing I wish I'd tied off a little more cleanly.
Also, it was pretty cool, and thank you everyone for cooperating with me, just going, oh yeah, I'm a world walker. We're going this way.
Yeah.
I mean, look, that was the goal. Fuck the Sirthans. It just made sense.
Yeah.
I did not get to use the forge, but the important thing is that I got the forge.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the use of the forge was it appearing in this episode,
yes.
my estimation.
I think my low is probably declaring the murder on an assumption that it would be a one-round combat. I don't really think we've had terribly many multi-round combats in this
Murders can be
campaign.
long.
Oh, I know. This was a bit drawn out.
This was ran into my knife multiple times.
She ran into...
Well,
she ran into my bloodstone 10 times.
Whoops.
Yeah, and on that note, I had kind of put the Celian fight together in terms of like sort of her state and stats ahead of some of the stuff that you guys had thought to do, like before we concluded in 53. And so you rolled in and we're basically going to stomp her given enough time and taking some to enough damage. So it really just became like, did you try to, talk to her in any way first, and how did she respond?
What would have happened there?
I mean, I don't think anything dramatically different. She just would have been
petty at us.
Well, in a particularly unhinged way, thanks to Lissa's efforts.
That could have been fun.
Wow, that could have been fun.
Yeah, that could have been interesting, but
the Sirtha thing also could have
too.
Right, and the Sirtha thing could have come into play in a more sort of direct way during that.
And I didn't expect you to talk to her. You guys have been really itching to put paid to Celian for a while, which I understand and take some pride in. But
maybe taking off her earrings and handing them to us.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I didn't really expect you to go in with even a perfunctory conversation necessarily, but it was on the table. And so it was just a matter of, what did you end up committing to the fight? Did she start
with pain?
Yeah.
Or did she take that from someone?
She started with pain. She started with beauty, truth, sacrifice, pain, and betrayal.
Cool.
That's right. I do remember that portfolio. Hell of a portfolio.
I don't remember pain having been mentioned as part of that.
Not.
It wasn't. Yeah.
That was a surprise.
It was. Yeah.
Were all of those others mentioned? I feel like.
I believe so.
Yes.
Yeah. Pain was
beauty,
the only...
truth.
Yeah.
Beauty, truth, and sacrifice were her names.
Sacrifice, betrayal and pain were the surprises.
Yeah. That's right.
But as much as I wanted, kind of thought that was going to be my earnest low, was not giving her a chance to talk or show the influence of that 17-point miracle.
The
miracles that I had sent in her direction, but at the same token, having her just cut off from the force that was very satisfying.
Well, and to be clear, I know it didn't end up being showy, but the miracles that you channeled all that power into had two primary effects in the way that the session went. One, she was purely reactive, basically waiting for you to come to her at that point, right? Like you had rendered her essentially on standby unless you gave her enough time to recover, which would have been probably on the order of days at that point. And not being super smart in combat, right? She was basically just lashing out however she kind of saw to do when you went to fight her.
What was it that was sort of going on with her being suffuse in Fermata? Was that
reconstituting
an obfuscation relative to being in the manifestation, or in the heart of the manifestation, or something to do with Adliova doing her thing?
So Celian had gotten some of the bits of Mott, and so deprived of Tintern, she was in the process of trying to claim Fermata as a chancel for herself to protect herself, and
I show up and trivially end all the murders.
Indeed, I didn't think she was ever going to really get an opportunity to make it work, because Adliova did have a crowd for the size of building she was in, but not 100 people, and had not fully convinced them to die for anything just yet. Like she was working overtime to try and make it happen, but you all would have had to really mosey for Celia to be able to re-enchancel. That was not something I thought was likely to happen, but it made sense as her next move.
Of course, yeah.
Secondary high, I think, was since this is 2 sessions, basically, was just, no, Beauty, you're done, go home.
Yeah, well, and I love the payoff of getting to see her actual face, too.
Yeah, that was
really
good.
Well done, yeah.
I'm glad, yeah. I had kind of had that in mind from realizing that if you got Truth in Tintern, you could use it against Beauty. I had kind of started to develop that.
It's been on my brain for a bit.
We had discussed that offline.
Yeah. It is interesting because one of my things for this recording session, these 2 episodes, was that what I wanted to do was reward you spending miracle points. So if in the middle of the campaign I would have tried to kind of hedge so that I kind of had the tools at my belt, or be like, well, you would have to do this, I was okay giving dramatic effects to more basic miracles, allowing the miracle points to be a little more fungible, because if you're willing to commit the power to it, this is the time for it to work, And I think it paid off reasonably well, although
oh, for sure,
my high is extremely so how there are the writing advice is kill your darlings. I'm bad at that. And
it's shit advice now, depending on how it's interpreted too, so
sure. But a while back now, I had wrote into sort of my little notes on my phone the description of the world after you succeeded. I wrote it down. I literally typed it into my phone before work at like 6 a.m. sitting at my desk. Just like kind of happened to think of it. Wrote it down, read over it a dozen or more times since then, ran it by Joanne to workshop it, didn't change a damn thing any of those times. Nice. And then read it almost word for word when you came out of the Godswoods. And you know what? I don't know how it worked overall, but I really liked it. So that's my high.
I liked it a whole lot.
It was very good. I in character was sad that Dosk was not in evidence. I suspect that Den will be a little bit disappointed as well. And, they may have to deal with art that deals with me and Thad, which means that Robin will have to deal with Thad for forever.
Damn it. But my interpretation of Dosk not being present wasn't necessarily that was an end to all things, just that there's always like the inkling for a continuation of a story, and I think the continued search for Dosk is where that goes.
I mean, that's certainly Rumnet's post-epilogue.
Right. Well, and my intent for it is that everybody who listens can have their own decision about whether or not, they want Dosk to have made the transition or not.
I actually deleted a portion from mine after realizing that everyone else's was going to be very short, and mentioned that occasionally after the Forge moved, it said that a stranger would visit the site, look around in a disarray, and then shuffle off into the distance. They find this remarkable only because he was wearing a single glove. But I realized I'm just it's too long, and that kind of takes it wouldn't have flowed as like in the way it did.
That I think was a good story detail to not declare.
Agreed. That rocks in its perfect peaks fodder.
Yeah,
I love it. I love that you wrote it, but I also really love that. Yeah, it is open to interpretation. That Dosk could really be gone, or could be in some form that is not yet understandable, or could come back, could be mortal again, and just have flaked so hard that no one can find him. all of these things are possible.
All right, one possibility that I hadn't considered is that Dosk is alive on the moon. just, just sitting up there on the moon being like,
it
Guys.
delightfully
1969 rolls around. Astronauts come back. Moon's haunted.
always has been. But it also, like, delightfully to the way I'd written the character before, Drew and I took one look at each other in the first episode, and, you know, that's history. Like, a return to Ramnet just kind of being not loose, but open with his affection.
Mm-hmm.
To any who would be interested in receiving it, really. And thus, more succinctly, as I put it, in the time between finishing the session and starting the peaks, Ramnet's got hoes in each zip code.
That's the conversation I returned to.
Yes.
That's the one. Yeah.
See, I circled back for you.
Thank you.
I like if we're doing the facetious continuity that this somehow leads into our historical Earth timeline, like with 1969 and astronauts finding Dosk's ghost on the moon. I like the idea that zip codes actually get based on where Ramnet's liaisons were.
I
That's canon
delight in
now.
this. Yeah.
Well,
You've
so-
all heard it here.
Ramnet was so prodigious that they had to invent the zipper for him, hence zip code.
That's not a Dusk fact.
It's not a Dosk fact. It's no kind of fact.
So here's a thing that I hadn't really thought about in a minute that I kind of regret how I executed it, and I guess this might belong in next episode's more campaign retrospective stuff, but mention of Dosk's distinctive fashion sense made me realize that by having him be embodied as nothing, we lost that incredible detail for the remainder of the campaign, and I am now sad.
There is an irony to that, which I think is a little bit fitting with the whole ascension and greater power, and none of it really being what he wanted.
Also,
Right.
no one else was envisioning like the old Taco Bell sketchy but brightly colored aesthetic whenever they were thinking
I
of
mean,
sketch Dosk.
I was kind of thinking of, like, the Take On Me music video
Yes.
sketchy,
Yeah, I get that. That's closer
which
to what was
very
in my
leaves
head.
it open to, like, late 80s, early 90s, like, Winn-Dixie coloring,
Yes.
or Dixie Cup coloring, rather.
That's interesting. What I was picturing was almost like a piece of extremely black construction paper on a piece of pretty black construction paper.
It's interesting. I mostly pictured Dosk's voids as white rather than black.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine were mostly
Mhm.
white too, but with like
Yeah.
the,
That makes
the Taco
sense.
Bell aesthetic elsewhere.
Well, when I described him as sketched in, I was mostly picturing him as like kind of charcoal or graphite, just kind of like gesture drawing. But there's
I
no.
think I remember,
one
yeah,
right way.
I for sure pictured that when you first said it, and then
Yeah.
it settled into the black on black thing in my head at some point for some reason.
And
But
that's perfectly within canon for the descriptions I gave.
no, I like that it's a contrast to Mott. Like that it's
Mhm.
something other than darkness or silver. That's very cool.
Yeah.
That was
Like-
kind of my initial idea too. Is that Dosk's nothing is different than Mott's.
Mhm.
Right. No, and when you and I were talking about Boar originally, that was definitely part of the idea. Was it is an empty but kind of like brightly lit. It is not
Yeah.
a sunless place, literally or
Mhm.
figuratively.
So, my high
Mm-hmm.
is just how damn proud I am of us.
Oh,
Like,
Shucks.
it's been an absolute privilege. You guys are awesome, but I also, the whole damn episodes realistically would have been my high, but I would be remiss if I did not dwell on the fact that we are 55 episodes into this thing that at least had its inception during the, quarantines.
mm-hmm.
I don't,
Mhm,
I couldn't find the exact start date where we sat down to record the first episode, but it's been well over 2
It was sometime
years.
wintry.
Pardon?
like fall, I want to say, like October-ish.
Yeah, like fall, late summer. And yeah, like I was thinking the other day, like it's crazy to me how different my life looks, and I'm sure it's the same for
for sure.
everyone here, to contemplate how long we've consistently been showing up for this as everything changed around us.
It's been a weird, beautiful constant. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this has been a delightful constant, particularly since, a lot of my social life is prosecuted digitally, and this has become a central corner to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
cornerstone, even.
Yeah. I started off as depressed post-pandemic, well, not truly post-pandemic, but post-quarantines single, and now I am suddenly spending 6 hours in the gym weekly and in a 2-year-long relationship and pre-engaged. So, like, crazy changes.
Yeah.
We haven't mentioned this on air, so I'll say on air, Mazel Tov. That's the best.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Yeah, tis exciting. And yeah, I think the scope of the thing really came into sharp focus in that we are currently in like hour 11 since convening. Like it took all this to wrap up, even on the precipice of it, right? It's a big thing that took a long time and over a long time frame, but we're in a lot of ways
we built an edifice, and then we tore it down.
It's been 11 hours, but it hasn't felt anywhere near close to that.
Mm-hmm. No, not at all. Not at all. No, and it's like, I think we said something like this in a previous Peaks, but most podcasts fall off well before this. Most campaigns kind of don't reach
fall
this
apart
point
well before this. And most campaigns don't finish.
And exactly. And most forms of serialized storytelling don't come together in anything like this cohesive a way. So I think it's fair for us to pat ourselves and each other on the back a little on that score. Yeah. This was a cool thing to wrap up and put a bow on for sure.
Well, and I'll go the next step there, as I think it's something to be proud of, and I appreciate, Robin, you making that your high. I also feel like I just learned a ton. I mean, we went from recording and editing in Audacity with a lot of the problems that caused me, specifically given how Audacity doesn't really run very well on my computer for some reason. To getting more and more facility with the tools available in Reaper, and upgrading some equipment, but also, like we had mentioned, getting better at pacing earlier, and sort of just I have improved.
We tied in so many things in this session, some of them from actual years ago,
right.
literal.
Genuinely, so as a sidebar to my larger point, I believe it came up on air. It certainly came up in the little chat bar on the side here as well, that Lissa specifically would have been reminded of like the first entity they encounter on their first little mission into the swamp in like first and second episode, when confronted with the temptations of the throne, and I was the Lycoris recoil react gif of Takeda going yes, running in place. I was like, yes, I did it. It read.
Yep, it really did. It almost started off
success.
The same. The only difference being is that Lissa herself was not changed in the vision, but enough of the parts were there that it very much came across.
Yeah, and like the phenomenon behind the temptation wouldn't have the knowledge that we have about that, already not having worked, right? I felt like that was something that displayed its just kind of mean pettiness, just wanted to hurt you. And that was both for like narrative drama and climactic feeling, but also because for a game I have not played, I I will be very, very vague here, lest anybody need it not to be spoiled. But for a game I have not played, the climax to Night in the Woods exerts a strong hold over my imagination. If you haven't, may I suggest looking into Night in the Woods. But
I think I have it, but I never finished it. And that's a good reason for me to pick it up again.
Real good game, and the turn you're describing is real effective and real. It lives in my head too, for sure. And I have played the game, to be clear.
And so that is some of the kind of thematic thunder I was stealing there, I guess.
The idea that at the top there isn't something august or unknowable, but something petty. Like I can't stop thinking about that. That's so true, right? Like on the metaphor that we were sort of weaving, and it just feels extremely on point.
Yeah.
Well, like, not to take us into both digressive and consternating places, but like in a world where somebody like Elon Musk can be the richest person and at the top of the food chain of the dominant economic system of the dominant country in the world, having the throne be petty and mean feels
appropriate.
Yeah, like it's not
Accurate.
Disconnected from reality.
Yeah. This is like the only canonical through line between this campaign and Meat Punks is we've already alluded to the existence of an Elon Musk equivalent in that setting. So more on that later.
I always thought that Elon Musk, at least his eyes, looked something like a void.
There's certainly nothing going on behind him.
Yeah.
But yeah, that just, was kind of, it wasn't where I started out in episode 1 necessarily taking it, but certainly by the time we got to this point, having with you all having set your goals as you had, it made sense for, I didn't think I could make something tempting enough with my imagination for your characters to really consider stepping into the position of over-god. So instead, I decided to take the opportunity to characterize the motive force behind the system that had
God,
existed.
Romnet would have been so sad.
Yeah.
Because he, I think, more than anyone except, differently from the rest of them, no more, thrives on close connection. Like, I think Adam a little bit had a bit of trouble placing me into the epilogue because my connections were all to people rather than places or events.
I will generalize that actually to the part of these 2 episodes that I was shakiest on was definitely trying to describe how both the offered temptation and kind of the warm epilogue like fit with the priorities, values, characterizations, motivations of each character from where I'm sitting in a way that would read well to the players and to the listeners. And because I was withholding Dosk's presence into sort of the post-epilogue as an unknown, I gave myself an even bigger challenge where Romnet was concerned.
Yeah.
But I hope it worked.
I did really like the decision to not include any of the extant party. Like the exception I alluded to in the side chat was Dosk was the only one that had been a player character or part of the family that went to the void that appeared in any of our worlds, I guess.
Yeah, I sort of loved that even though, petty as whatever that force was, it either couldn't or didn't think to lie about that. Didn't think that it could tempt us with a a lie where we could all be together, or wasn't capable of weaving that, or like didn't think that's what we wanted. Like that was such a nice touch.
My thing is that like I kind of, the admission I'll make is I kind of stumbled bass backward into that pattern, but because the whole kind of central organizing principle of the throne is that it is,
A single seater,
solipsistic kind of thing, right? It's not the sort of thing that would appeal to the sort of person whose connections to others were strong, right? Like it's not in the nature of the position or of the force behind it to value those connections. And I guess my persona influences are showing now, but I don't have a personality or an identity or a consciousness behind it really, in like the deep lore of the campaign, but whatever is making the decisions or putting together the things that it was showing you, right, can't conceive of the people around the temptee as anything other than props
or competition.
Yeah, that was like the those things would unfold, but we would not experience them. Really underscore that. Also reminded me of a show called Continuum that had that kind of gut punch effect of the ending, where everything that had been like the character had been pushing towards comes to fruition, but it's not hers. Spoilers, it's been out for several years at this point. But
if anything, that's going to make me go watch it. So yeah, that's interesting.
I think that what I really liked about that is the fact that it goes to show that had these characters gotten everything they thought they wanted, they would have never found each other. And I think that's a really powerful kind of, there's many messages and kind of things to take away from the story we put together, but that's a great one that shows that things don't always go as planned, but you'll still end up someplace wonderful if you stick to it.
Totally. It's that classic storytelling want need thing, right? Like I tried to gesture at it with the one line where I was like, that's all you have to offer, everything I ever wanted,
I really like that.
That was
line.
great.
Well, thank you. But no, I thought that was a really good notion, and I think Robin, your read is right on. That it hurt, it hurt, but there was no chance we were going to say yes. Both were true,
and that also, I guess at the end of the day, like this is very collaborative. We have a lot in common as people, which is how we ended up doing this together. But to the degree that I feel some amount of authorship over kind of the big ideas behind the thing, I'm glad that one of the big sort of elements in that climactic moment ended up being like alienation. Like if it can't offer you a world with meaningful relationships to other peers, then it can't offer you anything. Again, reflects the way that I experience the world in which we live.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, again, we've discussed the metaphor for capitalism and all of that, and I think especially in the end it really came through. But like fundamentally, the throne is a hyper individualist, epistemological object, and that's exactly why it was never going to tempt us. But it's exactly why, like, it's also such great background about all the extant gods, because they all, one thing with the exception of Dask to some degree, the one thing they all had in common was that they were susceptible to this,
And Vinties.
And
Yeah.
Ventis, good point.
Ventis,
yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Well, and Ventis, right, was a big, like, this is an exception kind of thing.
Totally.
That sort of throws the others into relief. And again, I think we're maybe getting to things that will fit better in the next regular episode. But there is a self-selection process there, right? That those gods that are still around to wage war on a global level at the sort of end stages of this are the ones who found that idea most compelling. They acted on it
totally.
most
The divine
readily.
Elon Musks.
And Ventis, right, was the one who primarily flew under the radar, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a way of sort of staying out of all of that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, this sounds like good fodder for the retrospective,
Yes.
and I, for one, should probably wrap it up because
for sure,
we've been going for a while.
Let's wherever you're
totally.
listening to this, give a round of applause to our players. I don't have work for a while now. So I am totally, unaffected by how much time we spend on this. But here are these other 3 people that spent like an entire half of a calendar day, putting all this together as this, great big finale. So hats off to you guys. And I have had a wonderful,
I got to spend a day playing pretend with some of my favorite people.
Right?
Well, it rocked completely.
Yeah.
It rocked completely, and was no sacrifice. No pain was felt.
Pain
was felt, but it was the consensual storytelling.
It was the cathartic kind of pain.
Yeah, the good kind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we will wrap here. Thank you to our patrons for supporting us through this long, strange journey and into the future. The next big campaign we play was paid for directly. The system was paid for directly by your contributions. Thank you to our non-Patreon listeners, for your participation and support. We hope you've enjoyed this little look at, what our patrons do get with each episode, but we're happy to include you in this climactic moment. And the most heartfelt thanks that I can say to my players, I'm glad that you enjoyed it and that it was no burden, but not only did we do a cool thing with this, but it has measurably and meaningfully improved my life to be doing this with you all, and it has been a sublime pleasure.
I have nothing to add to that except likewise. Thank you so much,
all of you.
Yes,
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really, really do. I'm talking to listeners. Hang on a second. I'm talking to my fellow punks here. I love you all very much. Okay, now I'm talking to you listeners again. We love you also. Thank you for being a part of this with us. Those of you who are just listening, those of you who have never stopped in on a punks before, maybe who have like just been listening and that was that, and this is the first time you've dipped into kind of the after show. Yeah, people on Patreon get one of these for every episode. So if you're interested, feel free to join us. We would love that. But also just thank you for being here. Like if you listened to every episode, that requires a lavish thank you as well. We are so happy that you did that. And we hope that you'll join us for future wonderment.
I love you guys. Like Drew said, that's also for my fellow punks. This has been a fantastic journey. Of course, I am so grateful to anyone listening. If this is your first time stumbling into a Peaks, a lot of them have similar energy.
Yes, for sure.
If not the same sort of gravity as this one, being our concluding Peaks to a 55 episode long campaign. And because of that, anything I would have to say kind of feels significant in light of this long journey that we've all taken together. So thanks for walking and listening along with us.
Thanks, folks, for listening. As Robin said, I nearly said as Lissa said, this has been a long journey, and so much has been said that really there's little more to add. But thank you for listening, and be kind to one another. That's sort of the central message here.
Yeah, I love that.
Sure.
Here.
Yeah, and just really quickly, in terms of what you can get from us next, next regular episode is going to be a campaign retrospective. After that, we'll have some interstitial things. It's looking like Meat Punks is going to make a return, and we'll do some Unknown Armies, second edition as well. Then we'll be getting into Hardwired Island for some retro future cyberpunk goodness, and currently, when that campaign eventually does also wrap, I think I would like to do Flying Circus for our full campaign after that. So we've got a lot of good stuff coming up. Stick around.
I support that.
In the meantime, take care of yourselves and each other. We'll see you soon.
Nice weeks.